just taking shots on 6K guys that you really don't know what to expect from. So I think so there's some more stability on the bottom end of it and in that upper 7K range, so the mid tier. So yeah, depending on where ownership goes, for those 10K plus guys in the 9K range, I'm fine getting to like any of them this week. There's some that stand out a little bit more based on price, based on betting numbers if you're in the betting markets. But I think that for me right now, the upper 7K range, mid to upper 7K range looks pretty strong. So that usually leads you to go balanced. It lets you go anywhere you want. So I like the way that DraftKings has these salaries set up with that strong 7K range right now. The 8K range a little bit different though. That is not looking as great. I think that it's a little bit more question marks in that range.
All right, so let's jump into it. I think we're good to go. I see chat ready to roll. We got a lot of regulars in there. What's up, everybody? We've talked a little about the course and whatnot, but Jeff, I'll give you first pick. I believe you had first pick in the draft when we did it. What do you make? Of these guys up top, is it Rory, who I've always said I think he's the best right now? He finally took back number one. Rahm's playing out of his mind. We've got the big cat, and we got JT, we got DJ. You mentioned. Do you have a lean up top? I know it's Monday. We're not going to get too crazy into the specifics.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, it's Monday, things can change, but for me right now, I'm kind of on the Rory train as well. I just don't feel the need to just save money, and if I'm going to go with one of the top three players, pay down for Justin Thomas or Jon Rahm. Now, it's like you said off the top, you could pick any one of these three players, and you probably make a good argument. It's not like you'd be out on a rock by yourself or something, but. To me, with Rory coming in, I know he's only had one start, but he looked absolutely just fine, in control of his game, tee to green. Normal Rory, quite frankly. Now he's coming to Riviera, just a place where even in a small sample, he's kind of semi-dominated. I think it sets up just fine for Rory. Tee to green, nothing to worry about. Justin Thomas, Jon Rahm, again, I'm fine fading those. I feel like they'll probably split ownership or even take some away from Rory. So I'm fine going Rory. And then, going down to between Tiger and Dustin, I'm still going to be on team fade these knee surgery guys on Brooks and Dustin. I just am. I mean, I want to see more from Dustin. I think people are starting to get back on the Dustin train after last week. And, I think he's starting to find some form, but, we're talking about like the most elite field we've seen of the year. And I just don't want to get on like a chalky Dustin Johnson yet. I think Tiger Woods is going back to the President's Cup has shown that he's still capable of stretches where he's the best player in the world. So right now, top five, I'm going Rory and Tiger. Those are my two top leans.
Just like old times. Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff. We could spend a whole hour just on these guys, honestly, the storylines, the dynamics. And, of course, ownership will dictate a lot of it, Sal. But, I want to ask you basically the same question. With Rory up top, he did look great at Farmers, but everyone's playing pretty well. DJ's the one, you have some red flags there. I'm not sure exactly what the ownership will do, but what do you make of these five guys that are north of 10K?
Yeah, so Rory's the guy I like the most in really betting markets. The number's obviously shorter, 7-1, 8-1 in spots, but also in DraftKings, like Jeff was hinting at, you have just a ton of money. It seems like this week with just a deeper field, you're going to get better players for cheaper this week in that 7K range. So Rory does stand out. Number one, ball striking, so looking for iron players in this one. Fine around the green, top 10 in approach. Finished third in his one appearance here, or one appearance this season. Finished T4 last year here. So everything looks great for the number one player in the world. But yeah, Rahm, Thomas, they both filter in with the exact similar builds and strengths. And I mean, they're top five players for a reason. So right now I'd rank it as Rory, Rahm, and Thomas as the pricing goes. I actually like taking stabs on Dustin Johnson. The price point for DraftKings, maybe not as much, but in the betting markets, you're getting a little bit of a longer number on it. I've seen it floating around everywhere. I don't know where you guys have it at. I saw it in one spot at like 16th one. I've seen it closer to 21 than other spots. So those numbers I'm fine kind of taking stabs on. I have them highlighted right now. In the way I highlighted it is red for a guy who I feel like I'm just going to end up betting on and losing my money going in on it. But it just looks like a great number on him.
That's one of the great benefits of a field like this. You're going to get real numbers. Some of these tournaments, when you have two big names, they're 8-1, and then you're betting like, Aaron Wise at 35-1. The guy hasn't made a cut all year. You're going to get big. We talked about Brooks. It's very reasonable up and down. But looking at Tiger specifically, Jeff, he's the guy that I struggle on the most. Now he's taken over this tournament. I wanted to mention that at the top and I kind of forgot. This is an invitational. So it's a little smaller field. We know Tiger here. God, do you think that, just to get a little into lineup construction, I don't want to put you on the spot too much because it's only Monday. Yeah. I know you like him. Do you envision him as your first man in, or do you think it's feasible to maybe try to jam him with a guy like Rory?
I do think it is. I mean, I think it's feasible. You could do that. I mean, there's enough players. And again, yeah, it is Monday, and I'm just going off briefly looking at the 6K range. I mean, salaries came out like a couple hours ago, but I think that even in the low 6K range, there's players there I kind of like. I mean, not like, but I like enough that I'll sprinkle in to a couple GPP lineups. So just from first look, again, Rory isn't 12K or anything. He's 11.6. It's not like he's at the absolute top of the DraftKings price range. Tiger 10.4. I think you can definitely jam in two of these guys if you want. I think too, if you're going, to take one of these players, it's a better way to differentiate yourself to do that. We also have a smaller field. Like I said, the scoring might not be that high. So better chance of getting like some of these scrubs through the cut. So I think that's definitely a line to taking like a Rory, Tiger, or whoever you like up there. And like you said, jamming two of them in. I think that's a way to go. I think that's a way that'll differentiate yourself too, because I think most people, when they figure out who they like at the top, they'll just automatically go down to the 9K or like the high 8K range and pick their next golfer rather than trying to fit two of these guys in. So
lineup construction in golf is something that I don't think is talked about enough. And as this show develops, that's one of the things we're definitely going to be doing more and more, because I agree. A lot of people kind of have a blueprint or a template, and it gives dead ranges. And on Super Draft, of course, we'll have to see what the multipliers are. I don't see them available. They haven't dropped them yet. If one of these guys is incentivized, I think we're going to see him very popular over there with the potential bonuses. But in the next range, this speaks to the depth of the field, Sal. I mean, these are guys that could be 12K in a weak field with Cantlay. I mean, not Bubba, we'll get him out of here, but you've got Brooks, you've got Decky, Xander, Finau, big names. What do you make of this next range, and do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, this next range is just as loaded, like you were saying. It's interesting because you have almost like the fill of last week or day of last week at Pebble here with Bubba. I mean, winning, it's an even years. Is that going to be it? The last 3 even years this guy has won 3 of the last 5 years. He had a withdrawal 3 years ago, T15, I believe, last year. So, I mean, this is just course history you're paying for Bubba, but you're also paying for a player that mentioned earlier. Usually this is the spot where he starts to pick it up for the season or has one of his better performances. He's already had 2 great performances this year on tour. So I'm not as interested. I imagine that maybe the price point skews people away, but the course history is something a lot of people, casuals, even players that weight that heavily will factor in. And I think it's a real thing when there's this serious. But the guy I'm going to probably get to the most here is Brooks at 9,400, or at least betting markets. That's where I'm looking right now, 22-1. He's right. He's behind Bubba on some books. So the thing is concerning. He's been playing overseas. You haven't really seen him yet at all this year. You haven't seen him in I think since, was it October, the last time that we actually seen him in an event, pulling it up now. Yeah, so the last time that you ended up seeing him was a Tour Championship in August before October Shriners, where he missed a cut. So it's been a while. You haven't seen him playing much golf. But everything, if you're looking at his last 50 rounds, still seems fine. It's hard to sort of weight that, but at least you've had him playing golf over in the Middle East. And it's a guy who's a second place or second ranked player in the world. And the thing that I like the most is, usually at these events that aren't majors, there is just the stigma around him that he might not care as much. But this one feels like a major. I think all the people there, depending on how he's going to come into this, at least looking at it from the outside looking in, looks like a spot that you might actually get up for this one in your first event coming back on tour.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big Brooks guy. I've made that pretty clear, but I think it's overblown that he doesn't try. Maybe he gets in a different gear, but I'm sure he doesn't love to see Rory taking back the mantle, and he would love to grab a win here at Riviera. So we'll see, Jeff. But I mean, I definitely want to hear your thoughts on Bubba and Brooks specifically, because I think they're the most polarizing guys in that range. But what else in the 9K really stands out for you?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of this take of mine is going to depend on how ownership projections roll out later in the week. But looking at it, I'm probably going to be out on Bubba and Finau, and I know that's kind of going against with most people, what most like models and whatever are going to pop out this week. But I can't see Tony Finau not being like one of the top 3 golfers owned. I think people are finally going to start getting on Bubba. I really feel like the week to roster Bubba was last week or 2 weeks ago in Phoenix, when people still weren't convinced that he was playing well. I just, Bubba Watson over Patrick Cantlay and Brooks Koepka. I just don't know if I can do that, quite frankly. I know he's won 3 times at this event, but dude's like 42 now or 41, whatever. Maybe that shouldn't factor into my decision making, but I'm taking Brooks or Cantlay over him pretty much every time. Unless ownership works out that people are going to all take that stance, then I'll probably switch over and have some Bubba in if he's going to be like 10%. But I don't think it's going to work out that way. So I'm very much in on Cantlay. He might end up being a little chalky too, but I'll eat that chalk. I'll be fine with that. I'll definitely have at least some Brooks exposure. I don't think I'm going to be super in on him. I don't think I'm going to be like terribly overweight, but I'm going to have some Brooks Koepka exposure at 9,400. I think you're insane not to, unless we get some super negative news on Wednesday or something, like he's still injured. But I see no reason to fade him at this price. It's just a gift. Like I said, 25 to 1 in betting, well under 10K in an elite field. It seems ridiculous. I think Xander and Matsuyama, one of those guys could really go under the radar. Really just not sure what to make of Xander right now. He would look like in fine position, Phoenix, but you really look at his stats there, it wasn't that great. And Matsuyama's kind of in the same boat. So I don't know. One of those guys could pop up. I haven't really made a decision on who I might chance there, though.
That's the guy I wanted to ask you about as well, Sal. Is Xander specifically. He's someone I always have trouble with at times. I mean, he's certainly got pedigree, doesn't mind the big events, doesn't mind the strong fields. I mean, this is someone that's been a winner at the Tour Championship, at a WGC. We know he can play. Form not great. Price, I don't know where I really think he is in terms of the hierarchy. Does he catch your eye, or is that someone that might end up getting squeezed a bit in the 9Ks for you?
Yeah, he does catch my eye. Him and Finau around there. Like Jeff said, ownership might change some things. But, I mean, the biggest thing for Xander, at least what we've seen for probably, I don't know, his last 10 events or so, is his approach game going to be fine? It can be extremely hot, and that's where you'll find him in the race on Saturday or Sunday heading into the weekend. Tour champion, similar there, or it's going to be something that just doesn't show up like when he was at the U.S. Open last year. So approach is going to be big here this week. We've referenced just in terms of how hard it is to hit some of these greens in the longer par fours. So your approach game is going to matter. He's streaky there. If the ownership is going to indicate that he's not that highly owned, I have interest. I have him starred right now for DFS, not betting markets. But yeah, I like him for DFS right now at that price range.
I think too, sorry, just last thing. No. I think there's a good argument to make that Xander's just, from a win perspective, has a better chance of Hideki. So, all things equal, if you're a little bit unsure of both those guys, I would probably just lean Xander just for that reason alone. So that's probably the way I'll end up going.
I mean, Hideki, man, he really, I don't know what happened. Ever since he blew that PGA, I think it was the PGA, It's been a while now since he hasn't won since Bridgestone in 2017.
I guess Justin Thomas stole his soul or something.
He really got space jammed. And man, it's been a while. I know I've kind of been charioting the Decky train here. But man, the win equity, it's hard to argue with that, honestly. But, one of the things that I always talk about is that when you build your lineups, you don't need to get 6 guys that you're like, this is the guy that's going to win the event. If you do that, you're probably just going to end up with 2 missed cuts. And maybe the winner, and that's not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
But all right, working down, because we still are going to have plenty of dudes, big names. We got a couple, 3 straight Aussies. We got Scott, we got Day, we got your boy Leishman, Patrick Reed, a guy we definitely have to talk about, in Justin Rose at 8,500. I'm really interested to see his price on SuperDraft. Could be a pretty appealing multiplier. Jeff, we'll start with you. Next range, this is clearly going to be your second or third golfer in. What do you make of this high 8s, low 9s?
Yeah, I mean, the Aussie thing is interesting. I mean, I'm not getting sucked into Jason Day. Look, I rostered him last week. I bet him last week. It was fine. I mean, obviously for DFS, he came through. I think it was a pretty solid week, but I'm not getting back on him here or anything. He's just not enough consistency with irons for me at a course like Riviera. So I'm sure he'll be lower owned, maybe an interesting GPP pivot or something. But I would probably just rather go down to Leishman or Scott, or up to Scott as far as the Aussies go. Scott has always played well here, but it just always worries me. He comes in cold to this event. He often does this. And Leishman starting off the year, coming off the win, I guess, some people can make the old hangover argument, but to me, I just take him out of those 3. He's played Riviera well before. He's striking the ball pretty well. Obviously the driver can still be pretty wild with Mark Leishman, but top 5 finish, a couple top 5 finishes at this event. I would probably go down to him. I'll be honest though. I might just fade all the guys in the top 9K range, because there's 2 guys I got my eye on in the mid 8K range. And it sucks that this is my first show and I'm all in on Jordan Spieth this week, but I am all in on Jordan Spieth. Wow. And anyone who follows me on Twitter has followed me for a while knows that's a rare thing. So, I'm in on Jordan Spieth this week. I think this is going to be a big week for him.
So, well, we're going to need to dissect that fully in a second. But Sal, I wanted to ask you about Adam Scott, because Jeff just mentioned he has not played. You know, what do you do with a golfer? We know he's talented. We know he's experienced. It's not a guy like Hovland or someone where we're trying to figure out what his game is about. But what do you do with a guy that we just haven't seen? I know it's somewhat worrisome. Do you try to buy early? Do you do a case-by-case basis? And then how do you stack him up against guys like Day and Leishman, who we certainly have seen recently?
Yeah, and this is a huge thing. So like, first off, I usually just like overlook players like this in a field like this when you're priced up, where Scott is at least. I'm probably not going to get there. I think the price alone just steers me away with other guys around him. But yeah, we haven't seen him since the WGC in November. It's usually a spot that I avoid. Now, we really haven't seen Brooks on tour at all this year. He's been playing overseas, Rory just once, but just getting some sort of golf, also a different caliber of player. So I feel differently there. So yeah, Scott, I really don't have any checks by him. No real interest early in the week here. Around Day's another surprise. Obviously, he had a spot where he's played really well in Pebble already, but the golf so far has looked better. They've said that the back's been feeling a lot better on him as well, but not a guy that I'm actually looking forward to getting to, but I'm kind of excited to see what his game goes the next month or so and is looking like. Rose is the one that's interesting and maybe appealing to me. The price point, I'm trying to see if it's a trap or not. And that's what I'm going to have to figure out as the week goes on. So I don't know if his game sets up all that well here. Now, he will just play better at these more difficult courses. Again, different caliber of player, and you're getting him at a good price point. But another player that all we've seen him at so far this year, I mean, we saw him at the Hero in December, but he missed the cut at the Farmers, and he didn't look great there. He was losing on approach. He was losing really everywhere with the putter, tee to green. So it's hard to really want to weight that just one sample piece, but the price is really interesting. I'm just worrying it right now and trying to think if it's a trap or not. And I guess I'll throw that question back at you guys. What does Rose look like for you? Because right when I opened this, he was the one, him and Brooks stood out as sort of sore thumbs for me.
That's the thing. I don't want to declare him a trap, but he's going to be extremely important one way or the other. People are going to notice that price tag. He's an easy, like, third option on balance builds, can be an easy second if you take someone like Rory, and then you don't have to dive into the sixes. Jeff, can I convince you to play Patrick Reed instead of him, or is it just feel free to expand on Rose, or just talk about why you want to go to Spieth over Rose?
I mean, look, I agree with Saul being on Justin Rose. I think he's going to be with I guess it was you that said it. I think Justin Rose is going to be a very important golfer this week. He fits the sort of Tony Finau mold in that he's, got a good course history. Realistically, he did miss the cut of the Farmers, but he was second over in an overseas event before that. So his form isn't like terrible enough that I don't think it's going to draw people off, especially at 8,500. He might be a player I just put in a cash game lineup and then just completely fade in GPPs. And I think there's a lot of merit to that because this field is so deep. Patrick Reed is interesting for sure. Obviously had a fairly good start to the year, but kind of comes back to my point of I want more players who have been playing the last couple of weeks. I'm going to weight that a little harder over players who have been off. Patrick Reed obviously missed the cut. I think he missed the cut over in Phoenix, or maybe it was overseas. He missed the cut before his T6. But, to me, it is about going back to Jordan Spieth. I mean, maybe it sounds crazy to people, but, everyone's waiting to see, everyone's talking about wanting to see ball striking from Jordan Spieth before they get back on him. They don't just want to see putter. The guy gained 4 strokes with his approaches at Pebble Beach in the final round. He's first in 2 measured rounds in tee to green stats at Pebble Beach. To me, that's enough. He didn't really play that bad in Phoenix either, even though he missed the cut. So I've seen enough. This venue, I know it favors big hitters off the tee. I know Spieth is still inconsistent with his tee ball, but you're telling me that a guy like Kevin Na can finish top 5 here 2 of the last 3 years, and Jordan Spieth can't either replicate that or find a win here even? I mean, he's finished T12 or better in 3 of 6 starts. He's got a year in 2016 where he missed the playoff by 1 putt, or he would have been in that 4-man playoff with Hahn, DJ, and Casey. He's played this event. He's played this course a lot. He's played it in college. He's had some success here. I think this is a venue that Spieth can actually break through personally. So I'm liking the ball striking from last week. I think he's in a range where everyone's going to go to Justin Rose or maybe even look a little bit up to the Aussies. And yeah, I'm in at 55-1 too for betting. So look, I often get Jordan Spieth completely wrong one way or the other. So like I said, it sucks that this is my first week on Osmo doing this, but I really do like him at this price.
Well, you're coming in hot. That is
yeah, exactly. I mean, at
hot
the very
take.
least, right?
Nothing wrong with that. Sal, I got to ask, I mean, what do you make of Spieth? This is the first time he gained across the board. I know it's limited to the Pebble rounds, but since 2018, the end of it. So it is certainly a sign he was on fire with the irons. Are you in on who's a popular guy around these Osmo parts these days?
Yeah, I mean, so right now I'll say I'm timid early in the week. I'd say I'm leaning no, but I really wish that we could see just what was happening on some of those. I mean, he finished his T9, so probably the whole game was clicking, but just overall what was happening on some of the other courses. But yeah, ended up gaining 5.2 strokes on approach, which is huge here. Gained everywhere, like you said. Tee to green game was the best that we've seen it in. I mean, I keep scrolling right now in I'm back to May of 2018 at the Byron Nelson, the best tee to green performance that we've seen from Jordan Spieth. So yeah, if you're talking about a guy who, in terms of one of the more, maybe if you want to use the word emotional for lack of a better word, players on tour in terms of confidence and swings of that, this is huge going into a next week. So if you were to wait just what happened last week and bring it into here, more of a tougher format, if you can get up for that, yeah, I think that would make some sense. It's the best performance we've seen from him in a while, but I still am a little bit cautious of it. Just trying to use, even if you use just more of like a last 10 rounds, it's not looking great. Obviously, anything before last week's not going to get you that thrilled. So I'll probably stay away from it. But it'll be interesting to see where the ownership is and really how sort of the industry takes what happened last week and see if that really doesn't become a hot take that he is a guy that a lot of people want to get to this week.
The ownership is going to be fascinating. Of course, it's easy to say that's going to dictate, but it is. With Rose right there, I can't imagine that he's too popular. I know people are going to see the price and see the recent form from last week, but we'll have to wait and see. That's something I certainly plan to expand on.
I think that the 8K range might be, like, other than Rose, I think it's going to be a bit of a dead range too. I think that people will go down because, I mean, we're going to get to this next. I'm kind of doing your job, but there's a lot of players in the high 7Ks where should soak up some ownership. So we'll see.
Jeff, do you think guys like, to close out the 8K range, do you think guys like Morikawa and Sanjay, I mean, we haven't seen them in a price range like this in a while just because of the strength of the field?
Morikawa, I think he might even out-own Justin Rose. I could see that. People love Morikawa, and even for good reason. Dude's good, right? But I don't think people will ignore that price. Sanjay you could see a little bit of lesser ownership, just because he hasn't played that great tee to green, and there are reasons to fade him. Obviously, he missed the cut here in his one attempt. So, but at the same time, people will play him because he makes the cut every week, right? So it's not like he's going to get like no ownership. I think that's a really good argument for Spieth's ownership staying low, and just maybe those guys in the upper 8K range, who I said I didn't really like, but they, like Scott or Leishman could be really low on too. But I think Morikawa will still soak up some. And like I said, Sanjay is going to get at least some ownership just because people love him. So,
oh, no doubt. I mean,
Answer could be the real pivot there. I love Answer. He plays tough courses pretty well too. So that could be, I like Spieth, but maybe, the Answer might be the answer. Let's put it.
Wow. Spieth and Answer combos. Those will be in rare form. Well, the one guy we haven't mentioned, and Sal, you're going to officially have to carry this guy because you mentioned you find yourself rooting for him in life sometimes. Do you have, I mean, this would take some guts. I'm not going to lie. Could you go back to Phil, who I don't think anybody is going to try to piggyback that third place finish?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to. And I didn't even have really much interest last week in the one spot that you should probably have interest in him for DFS purposes, or actually putting, instead of just my fan base, but more so just my actual wallet behind him. So yeah, I'm not going to carry much of him this week. Hate to do that to the show, but I'm probably not going to have much of Phil in probably any of lineups or betting.
Sad, but I'm with you. All right. Well, now we're in the mid range, so we can kind of open it up. Like I said, we've got the 7Ks. We got guys like Bryson leading that off. Paul Casey's. People we're just not going to see at these prices outside of majors and big strong fields. Sal, what do you make for these guys? And really take it anywhere you want in the 7K range. Who stands out? We've got some good international guys with Fitzy. Scheffler's down here. Another cheap tag for him. What do you make of the mid range?
Yeah, this upper 7K range, I think, is loaded very similar to what you're getting out of majors, like you said. But I mean, you just look clear across the board down here. You have Bryson up. You have Paul Casey, who's been playing fine as opposed to last week, where his final round, I think he played 3 of those last 5 holes at double bogey, and just I think Jeff said he shot somewhere just ridiculous, like in the 70s or 80s, so or the 80s. So he was pretty bad last week closing that out, but not going to weight that too much at the Pro-Am. But yeah, I think Bryson, similar to a guy like Brooks, not much measured rounds or anything really over here on tour. I think he becomes interesting. Will be interesting to see what the ownership looks like. The one that's standing out to me is probably Kuchar. Not a guy that I usually get to when he's priced up, like normally 8-9K range on most of these events, but you're getting him in this upper 7K range. I think it looks fine. His game's been very, I would say, definitely above average, nothing near that upper tier range. But when he's priced down here, it does stand out. He was fine at waste management, ended up gaining 7.2 strokes on tee to green. The issue is the distance, and that's something that I'm looking for. But if I'm looking for a guy to also just make the cut and, like you were mentioning earlier, not just have to win it for me, but have a safe round, something secure here, I think Kuchar's a name that stands out. Lots of guys in this range. Kuchar, if you're looking at it the last 4 years here, has made the cut. Worst finish was last year at T28.
Kuchar's a guy that, Jeff, you mentioned earlier, where I might just play him in cash and kind of hedge myself against it. I have a feeling he finds the weekend. I don't know what he gives you. And I like to punish myself with Sergio and guys like that a little more often. But what do you make of that? I also want you to talk about Fitzy. I don't know. Are you a Fitzy guy, or am I confusing you with somebody else?
I mean, I'm not like a huge Matthew Fitzpatrick. You probably confused me with Baroff on Twitter, but
possible.
Look, I have respect for Matthew Fitzpatrick's game. He's a talented dude. It's just, I almost wanted to bet him at 80-1, to be honest. But you start to look at the course history. He really didn't play that well last week at Pebble. I'll probably sprinkle him in. I think I'm probably in your boat on your side this week. I'm probably going to kill myself with Sergio a little bit in GPPs. I like the idea. I'll probably just throw Kuchar in a cash game or something like that. But I'm not going to own him, because I think when people see Matt Kuchar under this, it'll just bump his ownership up a couple percentage up over some of these other guys. I think it's going to open the door for a pretty low owned Sergio Garcia, who to me has a better chance of a top 5 at this course. We've seen him do it before. He's leading here. He's in 2006, same year Spieth just missed the playoff. Sergio just missed the playoff. He's leading on Sundays, so he can definitely get it done coming in here overseas. He's played well to start the year. He's got at least some of that old Sergio form back, so that's nice to see. The player I'm struggling with this week, Casey, I don't want to say he's obvious, but another guy almost in the same vein as Kuchar. I think you can plug him into a cash game lineup. I like the betting odds on Casey this week. He really has not putted well at Riviera, but tee to green, he seems to do well here every year. I think he was second in approaches or greens in regulation last year. He just can't figure these greens out. But one year, these years, it could happen. Bryson is the guy I can't figure out, and I'm probably going to struggle with how much exposure I get to Bryson and Sergio. He finished pretty well here last year. He's got added length off the tee. I'm just not sure if his game is where it needs to be. He was pretty close overseas in his last overseas start, and then he had a terrible Sunday. I know he didn't show up to Phoenix, but that doesn't put me off him completely because jet lag factors in. I think it could be an okay setup for Bryson. So I'm probably going to have I'll be overweight in GPPs with one of Sergio or Bryson, possibly both if I really want to lose money this week.
Oh yeah, I can tell from firsthand experience, that is a dangerous game. But one I like to roll the dice with as well. I do want to say before we get any further, if you people out there haven't signed up for Awesemo Plus and you want to, we'd love to have you in. We got Slack, we've got projections, ownership, all the things that we reference that are behind the paywall. We'd love to have you there in addition to Super Draft. But if you haven't signed up, promo code PGA Strategy, 50% off your first week. You can get in, give a trial. We'll get everyone in Slack and have a good old time. But working down, we've got guys. This is where, every field, even majors, it starts to some chinks in the armor here. It's not as strong as we work to the lower 7, Sal. I mean, Kevin Na, CH3, Grace, your boy Homa, Cameron Smith. I have a feeling this is going to be a dead range for me. But who do you see here? Do you go to Noren, RCB? Neiman is back. A lot of names to choose from.
Yeah. So in this range, probably that right around the mid 7K range, going to gravitate more towards the upper range right now, a little bit lower. But Russell Knox stands out, ends up missing the cut last week. Just had a terrible round putting. I ended up losing over 3 strokes putting, lost on approach, not great overall, missed the cut. But before that, he's another one of maybe before coming into last week at the start of the show, somebody who's surprising. He ended up having a T21 at Farmers, T16 at Waste Management, made the cut at every other event before last week. So he stands out. His approach play has been very good for almost a year now, if you just weight it back all the way. Last week was the first time that he's lost on approach since Shriners in October. He's played about 10 events since then. So Knox does stand out for me, especially when you start to get down to this lower 7K range.
Yeah, Knox really killed me last week. He was so bad on the greens. Very, very disturbing. But this is where, I mean, you know, Jeff, one of the things, and you've talked throughout the show about the betting market. I guess this is a general question, but it feels like this. Do you find yourself opening it up to bigger numbers, or do you just think there's so many top end guys with win equities that they have that it's hard to imagine? I know these guys are better than your average $7,300 golfer, but do you find yourself in the outright markets really taking stabs on guys of this caliber?
This week is a little weird because I don't think you necessarily have to go very deep. I'm not sprinkling in a ton of guys like 100 to 1 or better. Obviously I referenced Jordan Spieth, but I mean, when you can get a guy like Paul Casey and Spieth and Bryson in the 50 range, like I'm fine doing top 5. I'm each way bets essentially on those guys at 50 to 1 or better. I love that because you get the top 5 and you get the win, and you're getting great odds you're not going to see on these players the majority of weeks of the season, possibly ever again, except at majors, right? So it very sets up like almost like a major championship betting market where you can just take these value plays, guys like Casey and Spieth, if you're like me and you like them, at way bigger odds than usual. And then you can pick like one player from the top as well. And I haven't really figured out who that player at the top is, but I'm not going to be sprinkling too many long shots. I might throw like a 200 to 1 on Patrick Rogers or something, who I'm FOMOing over early in the year. But other than that, there won't be a ton of wasted money after like 60 to 1 for me. I'm just going to target 2 or 3 players in that mid range and probably go one player from the top. So I think for betting for these majors, you got to take advantage of that mid tier.
I would have put pretty high odds that Patrick Rogers wouldn't have made this show. That was achievement unlocked from the clouds. But a couple names, Sal, that I just want to get your opinion before we dig into the cheapies and then we bounce on out of here. There's a couple of the young guns. We know Morikawa, I don't say he separated himself, but he's in a different price right now. I've mentioned Scheffler. Matthew Wolff is 7,100. And a guy out of Oklahoma State, a ton of talent, hasn't fully caught on. I mean, he's got a win and whatnot, but a little erratic right now. Do you find yourself, I guess, on a macro level, more apt to take stabs with guys that maybe we haven't seen a ton of, or do you go with maybe the more prudent guys and then, the Russell Knoxes, the Norins, guys that maybe have a little more experience, whether it's in Europe or on the PGA Tour?
Yeah, so specifically there, I feel a little bit more confident in Knox, but I also have some interest betting markets. You mentioned some of the bigger numbers. I think Neiman's the biggest number that I was looking at. Didn't place anything on it. 100 to 1, 90 to 1 in some spots. I think his game out of a lot of the younger players sets up a little bit better here. Wolf's off the tee and really just distant should set up better here, but everything else has just been, like you said, erratic. If you're talking about his approach around the green play, all that's been all over the place right now to a spot where even the putter last week started to go, or at Waste Management started to go a little bit as well. So the game's just not all there right now for me. I'm probably not going to get there that much. Definitely not in the betting markets, but I would say Knox, I kind of weight above all those guys, all the younger guys in that range. And then I do like Neiman at this point. If I was to bet him, that's probably the longest odds I would go.
Neiman's someone that we know he's talented. There's no doubt he's so young, gonna have some big things ahead of him. I worry about him when you have to scramble just because that's a weak link, but he can get crazy hot with the irons. But Jeff, now we get to maybe the most interesting range, in my opinion. I know it's not the sexiest and these aren't the best names, but we've got a blend of guys all over the map. I'll just rattle a couple off and I'll pass it to you. We've got like Jim Furyk, same price as EVR, who comes over, the South African. Same price as Molinari, who's playing maybe the worst golf in the world. Brio is right there. Sabatini. What do you make of a range that to me is just a mash of a ton of different type of players?
Yeah, I mean, a ton of different type of players and a ton of, you don't know what you're going to get. I think that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of people will probably just be avoiding this range. I mean, I will say this. I mean, Corey Connors sticks out as like the beacon of consistency here. I mean, obviously coming in with a ton of made cuts. He's got experience playing here in college too. He's, competing against like Spieth and Thomas, those guys. So that's just a little tidbit in case you're wondering. But I mean, Connor's definitely, from a ball striking tee to green, he sets up exactly what you want for this week. So I think Corey Connors at 7K should definitely soak up a lot of ownership, but it's not exactly hard to differentiate here because pretty much everyone else in this range is going to be lower owned. I mean, I'd normally throw out a name like Grillo, who's like solid tee to green, but he sucks lately too. So we can't even go to our guy there. I don't really know what to do with this range because I can't recommend anyone other than like Connors. So, it's just a range where you're going to have to just take on some risk if you want it. I mean, I think Carlos Ortiz for me at 6,800 will probably get a look. He's been consistent. He tailed off a little bit, but I think he made a cut in his last start. He's got a good record at this course too. But there's not like a whole huge lot in this high 6K range that makes me just like jump out and go, oh yeah, that's going to be a great play this week. It's just a lot of risk versus reward here.
Molinari is the guy, and I don't want to say a noted Molinari hater, but he has the combo right now. He's playing terrible and he has bad course history. Yeah. He is not going to be even remotely popular, Sal. Can you take the plunge there, or are you going to probably not make a stand with the guy? I think you can get leverage with not a ton. That's the one appealing thing. But man, I'm not going to lie. I was pretty surprised to see him at flat 7.
Yeah, and this is so I have him written down as like the surprises that we had earlier as sort of like letdowns. I have him out there as number 1. Both times this year he's looked terrible at Farmers and the American Express. I backed him in DraftKings and the betting market at American Express as well. So he's been pretty bad. Odds are, like right now on this show, I wouldn't recommend anybody playing him, but odds are I'll have some sort of action to Molinari at this price point when the time comes. He has so far this season on tour lost pretty much everywhere. At the American Express, he barely gained on off the tee. Everything else he's lost strokes on. His game it's just up in flames right now. So, I wouldn't really recommend getting too much of Molinari in this range. I would say once you start getting to the 6K range, some things that do stand out. Lanto got a little bit back on track, definitely compared to Waste Management last week. What you needed at Lanto is just a putter at that point. That's how he won when he was in Houston, when he was on that hot streak, pretty much at Safeway, Sanderson last year as well in September. So these are going to be much more difficult greens. If he can manage them, there's going to be a lot of people who just won't be able to in a much more exemplified way. So Lanto at that price range below 7K, I imagine a lot of people, for whatever reason, probably because of the win recently, a lot of people gravitate towards him usually, but I think he stands out. And yeah, Corey Connors is another name that I've written down here, not to bet, but for DraftKings. The biggest concern there is the exact opposite of Lanto, who Lanto's been a little bit shaky with the putter, but we know just last 50 rounds, a guy you can rely on. Corey Connors is the exact opposite of that. So it's going to be difficult, even more difficult for him on these greens. So it's the stereotypical, he'll get you there. Do you think he has a halfway decent, like at the Sony, putting performance?
That's what we're weighing. We're not going to find guys here that check all the boxes. It's just the nature of the price tag. They're going to be major multipliers over on Super Draft. These are the type of guys that if you think they can get into the top 10, top 5, massive equity if you can hit it right. But I'll open it up to you and then we'll give some final thoughts, Jeff. Is there anybody working really down in terms of cheapies that you feel pretty comfortable? Say you do, to bring it back, say you start Rory Tiger. How do you mitigate that with one of these cheapies, and who do you think it might be?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the reasons why I don't like the top 6K range, I don't think there's much difference between guys under 65K or 65K and down and the guys 6,700 and up. I mean, I think you can look at guys like Marty Laird, who's got a good course history. His ball striking has been okay in spots. It's improved the last couple starts. Putted well at the Farmers, and he's just got a great West Coast track record. I don't have a problem with rostering Marty Laird, and especially in like a Stars and Scrubs for GPPs. I mean, this is a player who can easily pop up here with the top 10. He's done it multiple times on the West Coast over his career. Taylor Gooch has been playing pretty solid golf. I mean, he's got solid approach when he's on. He's only 6,300. I mean, he's making cuts left and right. So those are the two guys probably that stand out for me the most. There's probably even a couple other names down here that I forgot. Kevin Chappell started to play well last week, although I'm not sure if I'm quite ready to trust him. His putting is still atrocious. And if he starts missing greens, you're basically dead. So, because he's terrible around the greens. But he could definitely work out if he has a decent ball striking. So there are a few players, I think Laird and Gooch probably being the top of my list. Baddeley, again, we're talking about GPP, just punt him in one lineup, but I think Baddeley at least could be a little bit of consider. CT Pan as well. I mean, this is a quality player at 6,200. He's only making his third start of the year, but he made the cut at Phoenix. Definitely a guy who could come around. So there's to me, there's not much difference between guys at 64, 65, 6,300 than 6,700 and above. That's kind of my take, and that's why I don't mind going down in this range especially for your stars and scrubs lineups.
It being an invitational also helps. I mean, made cut equity across the board. I'm more apt to take I don't want to say a stab, but take some flyers on these type of guys and open it up. But Sal, anyone else before we give some final thoughts and bounce on out of here?
Yeah, so I had on also that just Kyle Stanley, not a high profile golfer that anybody will point out. I had him on here as a disappointment for this year so far. I think he's missed the cut in every single start. He's missed on the number twice, I believe, but he's somebody that I've written down if you're just trying to take stabs down here at this point. I want to get to Scott Stallings. There's some names like Gooch, players that stand out. Jimmy Walker, just on name value, but you look at their game and it's not that great. And Scott Stallings is one of them. Just the putter's been absolutely lost, and you need not only a great putting performance, but a lot of other things to go right for a lot of these guys down here, but especially Stallings has a little bit more made cut upside, I would say, like you were touching on. So Stanley, Stallings, again, these are cheap guys whose games are not all there right now. Stallings a little bit better, has made, I believe, this year so far two out of three cuts at the events he's played. Missed a cut last week. So Stallings, Stanley to an extent too.
I think that's really, as I kind of say every week, and these are going to be my final thoughts. You don't want to go crazy down in these ranges, but you also shouldn't shy away from it. These are quality golfers. These are guys that can make cuts, no doubt about it. And if they get going, they have experience. They're winners down here. Just a blend of, do you want recent form? Do you want course history and whatnot? But that's what we're weighing. But, Jeff, just to tie it all up, I know it's Monday and we keep saying that, but just final thoughts on the course, on the DFS slate that we have in front of us. Any tips, tricks? What do you make of it before we get out of here?
Nothing too big. I mean, it's obviously it's going to play like a WGC or a major championship in a lot of regards. So, like I said, don't take that into consideration that it's a much more elite field than we've seen. And I think you kind of hit it. Don't be afraid to go almost all the way to the bottom this week. I mean, I think this is more a week where you're going to get players. You can do that. You can pick up those players in the low 6K range and really have them be effective in DraftKings scoring. So, the week is setting up. Looks like pretty much sunshine. Doesn't look like too much rain or anything crazy. So the course should play as it usually does, tough tee to green. But emphasize the guys coming in with good tee to green stats. Don't get too crazy. I don't think this is a week to just take shots with guys who are coming in with poor form, haven't played much. But other than that.
I think that covers it. Sal, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so I'm looking, I mentioned it earlier, just guys with distance here and that also have nice irons. It's going to be a lot of those guys in the upper range with your Rorys, your Rahms, DJ, depending on how much faith you have in him. So I've tried to track it like the last month and a half, just the amount of lineups that actually have two of these 10K plus players in them. It's always going to change depending on the event, but it's not as much as you would think. It's actually pretty unique to start that way, even in weeks where these guys are 25% owned a piece. So I'm going to try and play around earlier in the week with getting lineups that have a Rahm and a Thomas or a Rory and a Woods like we talked about earlier, and go from there just because of that 6K and 7K range being pretty loaded this week.
I like it. I really think that's an underrated DFS thing in general, is being unique with your lineup construction. That's something that tomorrow me and Tim Frank, Fantasy Golf Man, will dig into at 2:30. But I want to say, boys, we did it. Sal, Jeff, good times. I had fun on the first inaugural Monday show. I hope you boys enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything to make Monday go by faster.
That's right. Anything to make Monday go by faster. But chat, just want to give a special shout out once again to Super Draft. Go sign up over there with the promo code AWESOMO. Hit that like button on your way out. Follow these guys, two of the sharpest we have in the community. And what you should do, go get some food, go relax, and then in an hour come back and watch me and Lofty on the NBA show. So we're going to get on out of here. Good luck, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you soon.